This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 846, recorded on Wednesday, October 13th, 2021. How do you dig fossils? Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight on the show, we are going to fill your head with people, poop, and pain. But first, thanks to our amazing Patreon sponsors for their generous support of TWIS. You can become a part of the Patreon community at patreon.com/thisweekinscience.
Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. The end of the world is coming. But it's probably a really long way off, like billions of years, maybe. But then again, it might not be. But if it's going to happen soon, there's really nothing you can do about it. So why worry? Yeah, you could maybe prepare and try to save yourself. Live in the aftermath of civilized society, roaming a dead planet with a handful of human remnants. But really, what's the point of that? That doesn't sound like any fun. If the world can end abruptly and soon, wouldn't it be a better idea to start identifying how that might happen and maybe, I don't know, try to prevent it? And if history class has taught us anything, it's that science class is where all the real solutions are. And nowhere is that more obvious than This Week in Science, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Kiki.
And a good science to you too, Justin. And no Blair tonight. She is off this week and next week, and we wish her well in her adventures and plannings and all the doings that she does. But we have science in the meantime. This show has got to keep going. So, welcome to another episode of This Week in Science. We are back to talk about all the science that we found that we want to talk about, because there's so much and there's always great news out there. And it is a wonderful, inspirational midweek science romp, right?
Yeah.
Let's get a little inspiration. Let's do this. I want to talk first, though, about the fact that it is National Fossil Day today. And as we are recording this show, that's what day it is. And President Biden did something cool in relation to National Fossil Day. He reversed the cuts made by President Trump to Utah's Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante national monuments. Reverted them back to their full sizes, and is in the process preserving indigenous heritage sites and also fossils. Lots of paleontological interest in these areas of Utah. So today is a good day for fossils and for people and for nature.
Yeah. And for the people whose land that rightfully is. To have it undisturbed by people who don't live there.
And care nothing about it. Exactly. Yes. Oh, so our presidential fossil preserved the fossils and the heritage. On the show, we have all sorts of stories. I have a story about Mars. We got to go to Mars. I have a couple of stories about space, actually.
Oh.
3 stories about space: stars, Mars, and the future. We'll be getting to those. But then I also have pain, because I have to bring pain.
Yeah.
Bring the pain to the science. Justin, what did you bring?
So I've got a just good news segment to start off the show, and then I think the rest of, like, all your stories are space stories. All mine are about mass extinctions.
Oh no, fossils to be.
Fossils that have been.
Okay.
A lot of it's all heavily fossil record dependent. Yeah, and a little bit of a Bible tale tell as well.
Bible tale.
Yeah, you know, Bible
Yeah, I like
studies.
stories. I love
hmm
I love tales and stories and history, and science is rich, rich with the historical tales. All right. I'm at this point. I would normally say, "Hey, Blair, what's in the animal corner?" and she'd tell me something about animals. But
But there is an animal corner. There is an animal corner, isn't there?
there kind of is, but it's not Blair's animal corner, and
Not Blair's animal corner with not
you'll
Blair.
all have to wait for that when it does come. In the meantime, though, if you have not yet subscribed to This Week in Science, you can find us on our social media accounts, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We are TWIS Science on Instagram and Facebook. We are also TWIS Science on our streaming Twitch channel. And we are TWIS and This Week in Science on YouTube and Facebook. And This Week in Science on every podcast platform that is out there, pretty much. We do hope that you find us out there. But if you have a hard time remembering all that, just go to twis.org, our website. Time for the science?
Yeah, bring it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. This week, just today, really, there's some big news. Captain Kirk beamed into orbit aboard a Blue Origin rocket today. He's like, really, it was more rockety. And anyway, that was great. So he's the oldest guy who ever went to space. The James Webb Space Telescope made it safely without being pirated away by pirates on the water. It's down in French Guiana. It's going to hopefully launch in December, which would be very exciting. It made it safely. That's great. But okay, we've got these things about here and now and today, but what is going to be happening to humanity in 5 billion years? Where will we be?
Gone.
Or living on a moon around Saturn or Jupiter. Someplace not Earth. Because what's going to happen in about 5 billion years? Justin, do you know what's going to happen?
By that point, the sun will have gotten loosened its waistband, and we will be in the higher heat envelope of the outer part of the sun.
Yeah, so the sun will start expanding, and so the heat will expand out with it. It's going to be this red giant, and then as it expands and expands and expands, eventually it'll crash back down and become a white dwarf. But before that happens, it's going to go red giant, 5 billion years or so. But some researchers just published their analysis of what could possibly happen. They, with the W.M. Keck Observatory on Mauna Kea, Hawaii, they observed a larger than our Jupiter, but Jupiter-like planet in a Jupiter-like orbit around a white dwarf star. They found it because they were like, oh, what's this planet thing that we see? And then, wait, shouldn't it be around a star? And then they were like, oh, but we can't, that's that really tiny, dim light. That's a white dwarf. It must be around a white dwarf and not around anything bigger. And so they say that the evidence that they're seeing confirms that it's possible for planets in a solar system to survive their star going through red giant and becoming white dwarfs. So what this suggests is that potentially we could move in the next 5 billion years or so to one of the moons around Jupiter or Saturn, and hopefully we would survive. We would just get a little bump, and it might be nice and toasty on that moon after a while.
But it's 5 billion years. Like, that's like longer than the planet has been here. That's extremely optimistic.
It's optimistic that humanity will be around that long.
Persistence of any life form. Yeah. To think that a 5 billion year run is a thing. But by then, shouldn't we already be living on all the moons? Or like at least some people. I don't know who wants to live on a moon.
I would hope if we make it past the next century, even 2 centuries, hopefully we'll make it 5 billion years. hopefully within 5 billion years, our technology will be so advanced to make this a completely moot point. But
Yes, because it will have
possible.
replaced us, and then that technology then would need to survive in 5 billion years. Now I understand.
It's all for our robots, all for our leftover technology. Yeah, but it's a fascinating kind of proof of concept based on having found an existing planet out there that that we could conceivably move to another part of the solar system, just a different part of the neighborhood, and still do just fine. Oh, and another news for space flight, considering this whole 5 billion years going to space, humans going to space and all that, we might want to work on our brain physiology because according to a new study looking at the markers of brain health in the blood of astronauts, they looked at astronauts before they went into space and then after they came back. We know that there are changes to the brain because of the microgravity environment. And mostly negative stuff that we have seen has been related to ocular pressure and, eyesight is maybe affected a bit. But we've wondered about the brain. And so this blood study found a whole bunch of markers that suggest the brain goes through a lot of stress. It's kind of like brain trauma, like a slow motion car accident.
Oh,
And
geez.
that when you come back from being in space, your brain is having to kind of repair itself from that microgravity, the change in the microgravity.
Well, maybe it's like, muscles. You got to tear down the muscles to build them back stronger. Maybe that's how brains work.
No, not so much.
That's not really a thing.
But obviously, it is not as obvious as, say, the trauma that occurs as a result of an impact, traumatic brain injury. But there is damage. The markers appear to be very similar to markers that are seen in Alzheimer's disease. So maybe there are changes in tau proteins and others of these neurofibrils that hold things together. So the architecture of the brain is potentially being affected in a way that we need to look into.
You ever
Figure out
notice
how
on
to
Star
protect the
Trek?
brain in space.
Star Trek, it's on the Star Trek series. It's always mostly young people on that ship. Maybe that's why. Maybe it's they just don't last much after that those voyages through space.
Well, now we just need to talk to Captain Kirk. I mean, oldest man in space. For a few hours. Wasn't that long, but it happened.
Oh no, he may. For a second, I was like, there was another older man who went into space right after. He only had the record that long. No, he's currently the oldest man ever to touch the hem of space. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
The hem of space. Now I'm imagining the elderly skirt chasing space astronauts. Okay. That's enough for me. I need to just move away from the space topics. Justin, what do you want to tell me about?
I've got the Just Good News segment that dares to take on the worst topics of the day and seeks out just the good news about them. This will be a climate edition. I can't wait to find out what this story is about. Looks like researchers have discovered that a naturally occurring substance is a powerhouse of carbon sequestration. Can be used even to deflect heat from the Earth's surface and is highly efficient at trapping methane gas and reducing erosion that leads to natural carbon release into the environment. And it turns out this substance forms in great abundance in many parts of the world and is easily accessible. Oh, that sounds good. That sounds like good news. The substance researchers discovered has all these properties: ice and snow.
Okay.
With warming climate, summer sea ice in the Arctic has been shrinking fast, and now consistently spans less than half the area it did in the 1980s.
Yep. We're losing our shine.
Yeah, I'm gonna just stop it right there. I'm gonna get away from the just good news story and go to a completely different story. 2,700-year-old human feces was discovered in a prehistoric salt mine in Austria. Researchers found the presence of two fungal species within this paleo feces. Looks like it was used. They said these are the fungal species that you would use today in the production of blue cheese and beer. Findings appear in the current journal, Current Biology. Yeah, so they did a genome-wide analysis of these fungi and found, these are the ones that we use today in food fermentation. They suggest that they seem to have intentionally applied food fermentation technologies with microorganisms that the current modern day food industry is using, which pushes back the first evidence that people were using blue cheese
I love
in the
that.
Iron Age in Europe. Yeah.
They had advanced palates. They had these palates that enjoyed the wonderful flavors of blue cheese and beer.
And being a microbiologist in the modern day can be difficult at times. You lose the power goes down if you didn't have the power backups, and your freezers, and now your samples, your spores are going to go bad. The whole thing. I'm kind of picturing they must have found a spot. I see this every once in a while where they tour like a French cheesemonger place or whatever, where they're making French cheese. And the fungus that is the key ingredient to the cheese will also be like living in the walls and in the ceiling. Like it permeates the building. So I'm kind of wondering.
But you don't eat the building, you just eat the cheese.
Yeah, but it just kind of naturally finds its way into the cheese. And that's a lot of the early breweries and beer making was done outdoors in places where it could come into contact with the yeast. But this is a point where they have a pretty steady diet of blue cheese and beer. I kind of wonder if they didn't somehow create areas, where if they weren't inoculating buildings or vessels or containers of some sort with the fungi that they needed to produce their food. Because it seems at that point you're really relying on it. And so mastery would be the next logical step. And apparently it stuck because we still do it today. We still are using them today.
Right. I mean, it's using what's in your environment, and it does something. You can notice the effect. It didn't kill you. It tastes good. You enjoy it. And then, or it, that I don't have to cook this thing anymore. Or, this took a shorter amount of time for it to happen. Or, look, now I've got this funny feeling in my head from, drinking beer and having the fermentation process. But you start noticing these things, and that worked, that didn't work, that tastes good, that doesn't taste good. And it's what's in your environment. I'm going to imagine it was only fairly recently that we started really cultivating particular strains. I mean, I wonder, how long ago was we talked to the microbiologist, we were talking about sourdough starters and how people have kind of traded sourdough starters around the world. But really, at what point did that start? And what were sourdough starters? Like a gift that was taken from one ancient people to another?
Yeah, I'd be very curious. I'd be very curious to see a record of that kind of cultivation.
Yeah.
Very.
Different blue cheeses have different flavors. They would because of that. That would be fascinating. I love it. And I love that this whole thing is like, we can look at the leftover fecal matter from humanity, look at the fungus, realize that it was a fungus that's used in this kind of food. We're looking at other markers as well. But oh my gosh, they were enjoying blue cheese and beer.
Yeah.
They had a great diet.
And had apparently a high fiber diet.
Yeah. Much better than we do these days with all of our Cheetos and other things.
Yeah,
real
it's all
cheese, not Cheetos.
It's all thanks to the salt mine preserving it.
Yep, that's right. We talked about that before. Yeah, so many fun foodie things. But let's move on from food. You want to dig into some more space? Water on Mars? Well, not
Oh,
right now, but old water on Mars?
okay.
Yeah, okay. Uh, Researchers just published in Science magazine their work coming from the Perseverance rover, revealing what they say is an ancient delta lake system and flood
Mhm.
deposits at Jezero crater on Mars. They've taken a whole bunch of pictures, and those pictures show formations that look very much like the formations here on Earth that are indicative of the edges of a lake
Hmm.
that kind of went up and down for a little while, and floods that occasionally came in, bringing excess water that moved boulders into the area. Um, and these different structures that they're looking at from space, they said, okay, so we've got this Jezero crater has this kind of fan shape coming into it. And this could have happened just based on wind and soil movement. This could have just been a surface feature. The only way to actually go and find out if it could have been a lake, if this was actually a lake and not just a crater, that if this had water in it, was to go and look at it from the ground and to start getting those actual ground level features that you can't get from looking down from above, which we've done before. Which I think, one of the coolest things is like, oh, it's the change in perspective allows us to really start to get an idea of the forces that are affecting the surface of Mars and how similar they were to forces that are happening still here on Earth. So we've got this one particular ridge that they're calling Kodiak Ridge that's in Jezero Crater. And at Kodiak Ridge, they're seeing a whole bunch of sedimentary layers that are indicative of these deposition of layers of sediment because of small changes in the edges of a lake. And then additionally, they've got larger boulders and changes to the lines that they see in the sediments that are obviously changes that where the ground moved, where floods came in, where things were shifted around. And so they're able to look and say, this is the process that took place over geologic time. So Perseverance is now giving us real evidence that Jezero crater, where they chose it on purpose because of the features that they saw from above, but now where they are looking at it, they're thinking they can sample the boulders, and the boulders will give them, if they can dig into the boulders, they will give them geological material that is from earlier levels, so kind of deeper under the crust of Mars that would have been covered up. So because those boulders were rolled down because of floods, it's like this other material that's being brought to the crater that they maybe have a chance to look at. And then the soils that are on the surface, they could potentially, digging in, have evidence of old organic material. So because this was an old lake, maybe at the edges of this lake, they'll find evidence of microbiological life. Fossils,
Yeah,
ancient fossils on Mars. Will we find
that
them?
would be pretty cool.
It would be
But this
cool.
but this really is probably the most ideal location.
Yeah,
Really, if you
yeah,
think about the the formation of life happens so quickly on Earth. From how old we believe the Earth to be to when first life, it did not take very long for life
yeah,
to the chemistry of life to take hold. Um, and when you get a not a giant ocean world, but when you get this puddle that's exposed
yep.
to some change and to some
You
heat,
have
you
the
get
drying and the wet, and the drying and the wet, and you have these floods that come through occasionally, and
yeah,
yeah,
and you have these concentrations then that create the chemistry. The chemistry interactions are going to happen with great frequency, and yeah, I think that's a pretty great spot to be looking for life. I hope we find it. That would be so exciting.
It would be very exciting. And so Perseverance is going to be going around taking a bunch of samples. And as we've talked about before, it's going to be pooping them out so that the future collaborative mission with the European Space Agency and NASA can come and scoop those little suckers up and hopefully have a sample return to Earth for this confirmation. This is still years off, but it's really fun to be able to kind of go, wow, are we seeing the start? You know, this is one of those little pebbles on the path toward discovery.
Yeah.
Tell me another story. Do you have another story for this first week?
Yeah, okay, so this whole week is going to be fossils, and that...
So is this going to be good news now? More good news? No.
Okay, it can be. 37%! That's the number of mammal species that didn't vanish from Africa and the Arabian Peninsula around 30 million years ago. You can put that spin on it.
Great, thanks. A whole 37%.
37% did not vanish.
And we are vanishing them now.
This is after the Earth's climate shifted significantly from a hot, swampy mess that it was to a iceberg planet. So compiling decades of work, a new study published this week in the journal Communications Biology reports a previously undocumented extinction event that followed the transition between the geological periods called the Eocene and Oligocene. This is, 30 million years ago. It's a reverse sort of image of what kind of happening today. Back then, climate change was the Earth growing colder and colder. Ice sheets were expanding, sea levels were dropping because all the water was being put into the ice at the caps. Forests started transitioning into grasslands, and carbon dioxide became very scarce in the atmosphere compared to where it is now or where it was just a few hundred years ago. Nearly 2/3 of the species known in Europe and Asia at that time. Wait, I got to keep this positive. Nearly 1/3 of the species known in Europe and Asia at that time did not go extinct. Up until recently, though, up until this study, African mammals were thought to have escaped unscathed because Africa's climate, along the equator, could have been a nice warmth buffer from the worst of the cooling trend that was going on elsewhere on the planet. But the new research shows that despite the relatively balmy environment sustaining, African mammals were just as affected as those from Europe and Asia. And they figured a lot of this out through teeth. So a lot of this came from private collections. People who've been collecting fossils over many, many, many years. They gathered data on hundreds of fossils from multiple sites, and what they sort of witnessed was a drop-off of species where they just sort of seemed to disappear as they had been before the event, and then a reemergence of similar but different, and the difference was mostly seen in the teeth. They had a little bit new, as they popped up again in the fossil record, like these rats or mice would sort of disappear and they'd come back, but their teeth were almost completely different, like almost as though they were a new species. And the reason they think this is because they had to adapt. They had to completely change habitats, completely change diets, eating new things. The old teeth weren't doing the job, so they needed new dental shapes to adapt better to the new ecology that they found. And one of those mammals that managed to survive, one of those third of mammals in Africa that managed to survive, were the ancestors of modern humans. Luckily, we didn't go extinct.
Well, that is some good news. We made it.
We did. We've survived extinctions in the past. So maybe we can do it again.
Maybe we can do it again. Yeah. Or maybe some other species will climb up out of a grand extinction that's caused by us and become the next great thinker on the planet.
I think the orcas already are working on
Yeah. There are a lot of species that are ready for it.
The
But
rhinos. The rhinos are totally doing a
oh,
great
they're
job.
the cuddly ones, right? You think
Yeah.
they're not cuddly, but oh, they're
They're
really just they're
sweet
the puppies. Yeah,
big
they're great.
puppies.
It's amazing. We talk about these punctuated equilibriums in evolution. We talk about
Mhm.
these bottlenecks that have occurred throughout evolutionary time to kind of hold things up and then things radiate out. But it's really amazing to see that, we have these extinctions, and if as long as some remain, as long as there are certain organisms that have traits that can adapt and that, I mean, genetics is going to continue. It's going to mutate. It's going to work as long as machinery's there. The organisms can have the potential to survive and reproduce. That natural selection can lead to the next and the next and the next and the next, and radiation can happen to take
Yeah.
advantage of new habitats.
Yeah, and actually that's
Yeah.
what the my a story later on is also going to touch on that theme. And it's sort of interesting too because you think, well, how can, okay, because there's the 66 million-year-old extinction event that we'll talk a little bit about later. And it's the same thing, like 66% of all the creatures on the planet and dinosaurs and everything went extinct. And then life springs back, and then here you have
Mhm.
another 30 million years ago, 66% of mammals going extinct. How
Huh.
can we keep doing this? So the sort of interesting thing is, you would think like, well, gosh, if we just stopped having these mass extinctions, there'd be a a much more diverse variety of animals on the planet. But the truth of the matter is, it probably wouldn't be that much more diversity. I mean, you could maybe have like dinosaurs that were, doing some role that is now another animal is doing. But what keeps happening is, when there are all those open spaces in the food chain, or when there's those niches that can be exploited for resources, something fits in there. And that's when we also see a lot of convergent evolution taking place, where a completely different creature is now eating the same food that some ancient extinct creature ate for a million years. And
Yeah.
over time, it evolves very similar teeth, or very similar strategies, or very similar size, weight ratio, or whatever, because it's eating the same thing. It needs the same toolkit to survive. So even though we keep getting extinct and losing a lot of diversity,
Yeah.
evolution builds that diversity back in
Back
with
up.
next
Mhm.
generations of animals. So
Well,
yeah,
because it's the diversity that allows that use of different parts of habitats. It allows an organism to take advantage of something and to capitalize on a resource that it potentially couldn't capitalize, or that nobody else was capitalizing on. Allows it to survive in just the right way. That's where diversity really starts to have its real magic. Yeah. Yeah. But, once again, we gotta go look back after looking at our planet and what's happened here through evolutionary time. Let's look at the universe. Researchers have been trying to look at the galactic center, the center of the Milky Way galaxy. What's there? There's so much stuff just in the Milky Way galaxy. I mean, we talk about the whole universe. There's so much stuff just in the Milky Way galaxy that we have no idea. So researchers are like, let's point our telescopes at the center. Let's look at the galactic center and take a look at what's going on there. And these researchers discovered what they think is a variable star, but they're not really sure. They've got this really weird,
variable
unpredictable.
star.
It's a radio signal, and it's
Okay.
intermittent. It's unpredictable. It's a little weird. And they went and they tried to see if they saw a visible signal, whether there was light coming from wherever this signal came from. There's no light. They're not seeing anything. They're just getting this radio signal. It's just um, they're published in Astrophysical Journal this week, and the signal it's like a little bit, and then it'll stop for a period of time, and then it'll get stronger, and then it'll fade away, and then it'll come back, and then it'll go away. And it's got just this variability, and it was on and off, and they didn't really know if it was going to come back again. And so they tried looking again, and luckily it did come back, but it was happening a lot more frequently. It's not like any other variable star that has been described to date because they can't actually connect it to a star. They haven't been able to connect it to anything physical releasing light. It's only a radio signal that's coming from the galactic center. And so the researchers, it's now named ASCAP, ASKAP, J173608.2-321635. You know, as they
Catchy. Very catchy name.
love to give these things their catchy names as they are working on this. They've named it after its coordinates. That is where it is found in the sky. And it really was invisible, became bright, faded away, then reappeared. That's what the researchers are saying. And so now they're going to keep looking to see if they can learn anything else about this signal, because we don't know where it's coming from, other than the center of the galaxy. We don't know what is causing it. We don't know what's happening. There's a researcher from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee who's a supervisor on this project, and he says that the information we do have has some parallels with the emerging class of objects known as galactic center radio transients, including one called the cosmic burper. So apparently there are transient radio signals coming from near the galactic center, and one of them burps.
I like Fada in the chat room's answer better. It's the syndicated broadcast of Dr. Demento.
Could be. Could be. Yeah, so I mean, what is happening around a star? Is it dust? Is it gas getting in the way? Why? What objects near the galactic center would be causing these radio signals? Are these stars that are emitting radio signals? If you think that they're stars, you'd probably get light along with them as well, unless they're so far away or blocked by something so that we can't get the light from them for whatever reason. Are they coming from areas of dark matter? Are they coming from black holes? We don't know. It's a big mystery. Yeah. Yes, could be radio waves bouncing back.
It could be.
Sure.
And
it is not a fast radio burst. No.
And
it's not fast. It's transient.
Could be all of those things to some degree, because I mean, it's you're talking about towards the center of the galaxy. That's a pretty crowded neighborhood.
Yeah.
So it could be, a
lot going
bunch
on.
of stuff getting in the way of a thing, or a thing passing in front of, but it could be other, whole solar systems getting in the way of the thing. Yeah.
Yep. There could be a lot going on, or as Goldazader is saying, could be a Dyson sphere. Yes, could be just sufficiently advanced civilizations that we're finally capturing their signals. But that, again, is just one idea, the hypothesis. Most likely, we don't know. And we have a signal, and that's all we have. And this is just grounds for a lot more research. More questions. That's what we like. So many more questions. This is This Week in Science. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Science Fun. If you love the show, please consider heading over to TWIS.org and ordering one of our TWIS Blair's Animal Corner 2022 calendars. Blair has done a lot of work to put together some great artwork for this year's or next year's calendar, and they are available for sale now. We will be mailing them out as soon as we get them in. I hope that we are able to get them to you before 2022. But sales of these calendars do support the show, and they're also a great way for you to keep track of awesome science-y events year-round. I would come back right now and start a COVID update, but there's no COVID news. I'm just not doing COVID this week. We're not going to do it. We're surrounded by it. Kids are back in school. COVID went up. Correlation, whatever. Let's not have Blair's Animal Corner.
I feel like I should have handled the Just Good News segment that way. I should have just been, Just Good News. Let me skim over what's here. Yeah, no. I like your style, Kiki. I like your style. I got nothing good to say. Just move along. Move along.
Nothing to see here. Nothing good to say. This is the new science show. Nothing to see here. But we do have some Not Blair's Animal Corner. Not Blair's Animal Corner.
With Not Blair.
Yeah. Okay. So first, I want to talk about, I just want to talk about primates because primates are amazing. So we're going to talk about primates for a little bit in this Not Blair's Animal Corner. First story is that gorillas hear voices.
Oh.
And can discern and differentiate between speakers. Researchers at the University of Georgia played recordings of researchers and handlers, veterinarians, the zoo maintenance person to the gorillas that they had in captivity. And the question was, do they actually know different individuals? Are they paying attention to different individuals, or are they just reacting to, the way that the veterinarians look? When a veterinarian comes in, the gorillas get upset, but is it because they know that that particular person is a veterinarian? Or, is it they're dressed like a veterinarian? They're wearing their vet tech clothes, or it's the maintenance person wearing the maintenance clothes. They don't like the maintenance person.
Now they don't like anybody because the face mask is what they associated with the vet, and now everybody's wearing them, so they're just constantly irritated.
Right. And so they recorded all voices saying, hello, good morning, for all of the people that would normally come into the gorillas' enclosure, and that the gorillas would know or not know. And then they also had total stranger voices. And they played them over the course of 3 months to the gorillas to see what would happen. And, what do you do if you hear a voice outside your front door? If it's a voice you don't recognize, you're sitting in your living room and you suddenly hear a voice, somebody talking right outside your front door. What would you do?
Open the door and see who it is.
Well, you could do that, but most people would kind of stop. Or if you hear somebody like walking and talking right next to your house, next to your window or something, like you're like, perk up. You get quiet. You start paying attention because you want to figure out whether or not this person is a threat. Are they going to rob my house? What's going on? Oh, they're the gardener.
Gosh.
Okay, it's fine. Fine, it's great. And then you're fine and you can relax. But once you realize that someone is not a threat, you can relax and go about your business. Gorillas are the same exact way, and they determined that the gorillas in this zoo could differentiate the voices of the different people that they came into contact with. So they knew the voices of the veterinarians versus their zookeepers that they really liked. And so when they heard the voices of the hello, good morning, they would get like calm, happy behavior if it was their nice zoo handlers versus the veterinarians who were going to come and give them shots and stuff. So the gorillas, they know, they pay attention. And this is some evidence that you would think, duh, they're gorillas. They're smart. They're going to pay attention to other animals in their environment. They're going to pay attention to other individuals. But this is really letting us know that they really are paying attention to who different people are around them and how those people affect them.
I think there's probably also a stigma or a stereotyping of gorillas because one or two gorillas learn sign language. People assume gorillas are deaf.
I did not know where you were going to go with that one. Okay.
I'm just happy you didn't talk about the chimps with leprosy story. That was awful.
I saw that headline. It makes me so sad. Yeah.
I saw the headline. The headline was sad, but it came with a picture that just was. I'm trying to fight off.
Yep.
Don't Google it.
Same. Don't
Don't
Google
look
it.
it up.
Don't Google chimps with leprosy.
Ugh.
Yeah, and that one's interesting because it's usually we think of the bushmeat trade that viruses are going to, or bacteria, whatever, parasites that have hosts in the primate species are going to spill over into humans.
Hmm.
And that's what we worry about. But we spilled over into the chimps. This is on us because leprosy was a human disease.
See, that's what
We
I
did.
thought. That's what I thought. But then, so this is a human to animal transmission of this disease. Then, see, I didn't read the
Yes.
story. I couldn't get past the
This is
picture
yeah.
that was in the thing. Oh wow.
Yeah, it's a microorganism that is that it likes humans, that is adapted to humans, and we gave it to chimps. Aren't we great?
Oh wow.
No, we're not.
Oh,
But in the
poor
good news
chimps.
from the gorilla story, going back
Oh.
to the gorillas,
Yeah.
is
Not all gorillas are deaf. That is
nope,
fantastic to know. Oh,
nope,
that's not it.
no. And on top of that, this means that if gorillas in the wild hear voices, like scientists who study gorillas in the wild worry that they could be sensitizing wild gorilla populations to people and making it more likely that gorillas will get caught by the bushmeat traders and the hunters that are out there. But what this study indicates is that gorillas, because they recognize individual voices and individuals, that just being around humans is not necessarily going to make them easier prey for humans. Potentially an upside to that.
People eat gorillas? I didn't even know that they were part of that trade. Because, I thought the bushmeat trade was like
Hunters
monkeys.
hunt
But they'll
everything.
eat
Yes,
anything. Yeah, I guess so. But a
anything.
gorilla, that's like almost cannibalism. It's too close. That's too close.
Yes, too close for comfort. Researchers looked at a whole bunch of primate skulls to figure out what happened, and they looked at old human skulls to figure out what happened to make our molars emerge from our skulls so late in development. Compared to chimpanzees, gorillas, other primates, our molars, our wisdom teeth, especially, they emerge super late. Like we're talking like 18 years old. You're an adult by the time, basically an adult by the time your wisdom teeth are coming out, your final molars. It's something that people have wondered about for a very long time. Why so long? Why is it so long? Well, these researchers, looking at a bunch of skulls, they determined it's because we have strong jaws. So, if you look at skulls of other primates, their jaws protrude out from their face further. We have a very flat face compared to other primates. And because of the strength of the muscles and the strength of the bite and the way that the biomechanics of the human bite works as primates and, our human ancestors' jaw changed, and based on the timing of the development of different muscles and how the head grows and changes, if the molars emerged any sooner, we would break them.
Oh.
So it's all based on the fact that we are strong biters. We have strong jaws, and the teeth would not withstand the force if they came out any earlier.
I'm very surprised. I'm very surprised that we're that strong of. But I would not have.
Yeah.
I would have given any gorilla or chimp definite biting power over a human.
You would
Especially
think
a gorilla. They've got the whole
but
nuchal
it's-
ridge thing or whatever.
But it's the way
muscle
that their
attachments,
jaw
you think.
protrudes and the
Mhm.
difference in how the muscles attach and where the forces, how
Yeah.
the force works.
That's
Where
very
does the force
interesting.
push? How does it work? Yeah. We are a different primate because of our bite.
Hmm.
Okay. That's it for me for that.
This has been Not Blair's Animal Corner.
That's
Stay tuned
right.
for more of This Week in Science.
On This Week in Science, we ask you to support our podcast because we are listener supported, and it would be wonderful if you do enjoy TWIS on a weekly basis and the science and discussion that we bring you. You head over to TWIS, click on that Patreon link, and choose your level of support, $10 and more per month, and we'll thank you by name at the end of the show. And there's all sorts of other fun, gifty things that you get for being a patron of TWIS. There's also that calendar. Remember, 2022 is coming. We can't stop it. But let's come back now to some more science. Hey, Justin.
Hey.
You want to answer some questions? Oh, wait. Or not answer questions.
Times?
No, never mind. Do you want to talk about science?
Sure, why not? 66 million years ago, an asteroid struck the Earth and wiped out most of the dinosaurs and 3/4 of the life on Earth. Early ancestors of primates and marsupials were among the only tree-dwelling mammals that survived. It's a very big mystery. Tree-dwelling species are boreal. Turns out that's easier for me to say than tree-dwelling. Species were especially at risk of extinction because global deforestation caused by wildfires from the asteroid's impact kind of took away all the places where they were used to living. New study, computer models, fossil records, and information from living mammals revealed that most of the surviving mammals did not rely on trees at all. And our human ancestors must have been versatile enough to adapt to the loss of trees, suggesting that they had ecological flexibility during the interval of global habitat instability. So human ancestors, ecologically flexible. It looks like we've survived not one, but two major extinction events by being ecologically flexible. Because there's this one, and then there's the climate change one 33 million years after this. We're pretty good. But do you think we'd make it today, Kiki?
Would we make it today?
If an asteroid hit and just all the houses burned down, forest's fine, but the houses are just all gone. Do you think we'd be flexible enough to live out in the open for a while?
I think we could, but I'm concerned. My son was just having some issues understanding that there's no internet in the desert necessarily. That
Oh yeah. Okay.
I'm like, you could go to the desert. He's like, but wouldn't there be internet there? I mean, what if someone needs help? I'm like, well, how would the internet get there? And so, yeah. What would we do, Justin? No houses, no internet. Could we do it?
We would go out and we'd seek the advice from wise old homeless people who have, some experience in these areas. We'd trade all our shiny gold and silver trinkets away and try to get a good solid shopping cart and a stiff piece of cardboard. And we just adapt, apparently. At least our ancestors did. I don't know if we would do that. I think most people would just die of thirst and starvation. But anyway, earliest mammals.
I think we could. I mean, I think people are adaptable still. I think we have gotten used to the comforts of civilization, but that does not mean that we need the comforts of civilization.
Yeah, I don't know that everybody's cut from that. People seem to be freaking out because there's not enough product being brought into stores because of shipping line stuff problems. But
there are bigger things to worry about, people. That's all I have to say. But anyway.
Yeah, this is the thing. The earliest mammals in the record or in the fossil record appear about 300 million years ago. And they weren't that amazing at first, but then there was a huge explosion and expansion of flowering plants about 86 million years ago. And as flowering plants evolved and expanded and exploded into diversity, so did then the mammals that were using them for food. So we sort of tracked plant evolution in mammal evolution. So asteroid struck.
That's cool.
Most of this died off along with the dinosaurs. But then what happened was the mammals came back
Yeah.
And they diversified and they started to fill all of those roles. Some that might have been the scavenger or predator or herbivore dinosaurs of the past were now more and more being filled by mammals.
Hmm.
So again, like we were talking about before, as diverse as life is on the planet, it could be just as diverse, but with totally different animals filling that diversity list if it wasn't for the pesky asteroids that keep wiping out most of life on Earth.
Volcanoes, asteroids, just the big things that we can't control. Yeah.
Yeah. And the next study, UC Santa Barbara researchers who may have been recently listening to this show are trying to figure out how to make humans survive asteroids. They've come up with a plan of their own for surviving the next big asteroid strike. The plan is to blow up any asteroid heading for us.
That sounds reasonable.
Sounds
right?
like a good idea. So actually, it is kind of, it's not that it's totally different than some of the plans in the past, but a lot of plans have been, we'll catch it far enough out and we'll redirect it. We'll put thrusters on it, but the problem is like, okay, you get there and you want to put how do you connect a thruster solidly enough to something hurling through space? Well, if you try to puncture into a thing or drill into it or do anything like that, you're going to just move yourself off. You're not anchored to it anyway. So there's all these bizarre notions of ways that we could like lasso an asteroid or a meteorite in space and try to move it with thrusters. They're saying that's going to take too long, and you have to catch it far enough out, which can happen. They go through these sort of what I guess they're called the keyhole orbits, where it's like you see it go by and you're like, uh-oh. Well, if it's going through there, next time it comes by 30, 40, 50, 100 years from now, it's going to be coming a lot closer because once it gets through this little area.
Yep.
But what they're looking at is they think they can get a fast enough response by using the spacecraft that we have now to identify something that is inbound. And like instead of sending Kirk up, we can still send Shatner. He can even be part of the mission. We send Shatner up, but then they launch this thing that goes, and basically what they want to do is fragment. They just want to blow the thing up.
Don't you? I mean, if it's far enough away, then fragments are going to be fine. Hopefully you'll get it into small enough pieces that they would burn up upon entry into the atmosphere, or maybe they're a little big and they'd make it to ground, but the probability of them hitting someplace where people are is small compared to the size of the planet.
So the goal is to make to fragment the asteroid into pieces that are no bigger than or as small no bigger than a house. So
no bigger than houses are pretty big. That's a big piece.
It seems like
that could do a lot of damage, right?
Yeah. So but what they're worried about is the ones that are coming in. Like there was the 1908 Tunguska in Tunguska, Russia. It was a 50-meter wide. So this is bigger than a house. This is like a giant mansion house.
Flattened trees, and it was like
1,000 atomic bombs going off in the atmosphere. Like it didn't make it all the way to the ground because there's something about if you come in at too steep of an angle, you decelerate like 90% in the first second, and then another like 90% in the next. It's like insane deceleration that takes place. Tons of pressure, tons of heat built up in this thing, and it exploded. And there is like a ring of trees that are all laid down away from this. You can almost picture the explosion taking place in there. February 15th, 2013, again in Russia, the Chelyabinsk meteor, 62-foot or 19-meter diameter asteroid, explodes over a city in Russia. 2,000 people are hurt. Windows are getting shattered. Nobody died, thankfully. But the same sort of thing. It came in at that angle, exploded in the atmosphere. Events like these apparently occur once or twice a century.
Right. Fairly often. That's
So
often enough.
we've already got one in
Yeah.
2013. You know, feel pretty good for the odds for the rest of the year, but you never know.
For the rest of this year. Great.
Yeah, yeah, for the rest of this year. But that's just playing the odds. But
Uh-huh.
there was sometimes they have maybe some biblical impact on society. There's a Middle Bronze Age city, Tal el Hammam, can't even pronounce it, located in the Jordan Valley, northeast of the Dead Sea. It was destroyed by one of these airbursts, they think, in 1650 BC. Archaeological excavation of the site began in 2005. They found shocked quartz, melted pottery, diamond-like carbon suit remnants of, there was bones of people in the thing, melted plaster, melted mud brick, melted minerals that were like platinum, iridium, nickel, gold, silver, zircon, chromium, melted quartz. I mean, this was like a high, intense heat event. It was also a very high concentration of salt in the destruction layer, which researchers speculate could be part of the story of Sodom in Genesis. The good part of the story with the hellfire, not the rest of that story, which is very super creepy, misogynistic, homophobic, pro-incest parts of that story as well. You can Google that one if you want some other time.
Is this the biblical part of the story that you were teasing earlier?
This is the biblical part of the story.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this is
where it's based on some amount of truth that it was possibly an asteroid, a meteor airburst.
Yeah, because it the layers of salt everywhere and mixed with bone, and then just this melted city that had like thick walls and was probably a prosperous city at the time. Becomes this. They needed a story to explain what the heck happened. Interesting, 13 miles away is the city of Jericho, which there's a story about people blowing trumpets while walking around, and then the walls of Jericho falling down. But now that you know Jericho was 13 miles away from a giant explosion that basically incinerated a town, maybe it wasn't the trumpeting that made. Maybe it was more the meteor that left a meter and a half of ash and melted quartz on the ground. So.
The sound of their trumpets melting? No.
Yeah. But yeah, so anyway, back to how to break down an asteroid. So they're looking instead of deflecting the object, the strategy is to let Earth take the hit, dismantle the asteroid into smaller house-sized pieces, and let the fragments enter the atmosphere. The atmosphere should absorb the energy and vaporize the house pieces into the debris that's so small that it probably won't even touch ground.
I mean, this idea is not an old idea. The idea of let's blow up the asteroid that's coming to destroy the planet. Great. So then it's the real question of how do you do it? So this is probably getting at, okay, if we know that an asteroid is a certain size, what do we have to hit it with to make it into chunks that are house-sized or smaller? How do we get it so that it's going to come into the Earth at the right angle and have those chunks be vaporized in the atmosphere so that we don't have airbursts, so we don't have devastation? I mean, it's the actual, I guess, the mechanistic aspect of how to go about protecting the planet this is important work.
Yeah, I think that's what they're working on. It's called the PI project, which is standing for pulverize it. Yeah, they're right to the point.
Oh, that's good.
But they're saying that they can create launch vehicles for their asteroid slicer dicers that you could fit on a SpaceX Falcon 9 and maybe a NASA rocket if NASA still has rockets, and you could have a response time for a big asteroid like Apophis in something like 10 days. Like you could get that mission up and in place and ready to rock within 10 days. And they also have an idea for basically an intercontinental ballistic missile interceptor that could hit a target like the Chelyabinsk one that hit Russia in 2013 in a matter of minutes. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Planetary protection.
Planetary defense. This kind of theoretical work is really important toward that. So, all of you kids out there who like playing with chunks of rock and other chunks of rock, imagine where your where your childhood joys could go. You could be protecting the planet someday. Yes. Did you have any more of these fun stories?
No, I think that was it. I think that was the last one.
That's the last one. What?
Unless you want me to tell more about the homophobic pro-incest aspects of the Sodom and Gomorrah story.
Nope.
No?
Nope.
Okay.
That's okay. We'll let other shows dig into those things. But yeah, I agree. Well, not a great story. So let's talk about pain and how does pain happen? How does pain happen? And not just any pain, like, okay, we've got the Nobel Prize and everything. It's like touch receptors. Woo! We know we have these receptors in our skin and in our tendons and our joints and we've got these bits of the extension, these cells that are connected to our nervous system that allow our nervous system to go, ooh, something bad happened to the body. The body is in trouble. We must protect it, right? Paper cuts, they're the worst. Why do those have to hurt the worst? But never mind that. Chronic pain is something that millions of people deal with, and we don't have adequate treatment for chronic pain. We do know, however, that we don't understand chronic pain. We don't know how certain traumas to the body lead to ongoing pain in the nervous system that you consistently have and you can't get rid of well. So researchers just published their work in which they tied off the neurons, basically little ligatures on the sciatic nerve in mice. So they put a little tweak on it, and it causes pain because it's basically tying off the nerve. It doesn't feel good. The mouse is like, ouch. But what happens then is that they were able to look at the spinal cord and look at the signals, not just the action potentials and those electrochemical signals that are carried up and down the spinal cord to the brain, but they actually were able to look at the changes to cellular structure within the spinal cord. And this is the first validation. They used autofluorescent signaling so that they had markers within the spinal cord that they could then map to specific cells within the spinal cord that were associated with the ongoing pain in the sciatic nerve. This is the first time that researchers have, to some degree, to a small degree, started to get a fingerprint and actually take a picture, image where chronic pain is happening within the spinal cord. Being able to see where the changes are taking place that happen. Okay, there are these neural signals. They make chemical changes, molecular changes happen within the cells. What are those changes? Now we know the cells, or they can look at the cells that are involved, start to see what are the changes that take place, and maybe start to really find some dialed in therapies for chronic pain. Pretty cool. I think it's it's kind of this inside, like, how does this work? And it's very like a kind of how-to kind of thing. But the idea that they were able to use fluorescence and these fluorescent markers to be able to get a fingerprint of pain changing the spinal cord, changing the way the spinal cord moves signals through it, making chronic pain happen in the mice. It's It could be a big step forward for figuring out pain.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that sciatica too. It was one of those things that
My sciatic nerve sucks. Ah.
it just seemed like a weird word that people said that like old people talked about their sciatic something, and I didn't know what part of the body it was in. Like sciatic, I thought it was a sinus thing. Like maybe it's in the nose. Like I had no idea. And then I was like experiencing it and I was explaining it to somebody. It's like, yeah, it's like my leg just almost doesn't feel like it's in the joint right for a while, and then there's this pain that gets like, and you feel it like this tingle go down your. Oh, that's your sciatic nerve. That's the thing. And I'm like, no, I don't have that's in your sinuses, obviously, because I had no idea until it was like started acting up, and I was describing it, and somebody's like, yeah, that's what you got.
Your sciatica, yeah. Some of the interesting aspects of this.
Walking upright.
Oh, humans, you silly people walking upright. That's just your body doesn't really want to do that. So, an interesting part of this this pain story is that they were able to, in addition to just differentiating the tissues from nerve injured individuals versus non-injured individuals, they were able to differentiate between male and female mice. That there was an actual physical difference in the way that the cells reacted in male mice compared to female mice.
Uh-oh.
And
This is good. Don't answer the question. The lifelong, who feels pain more, men or women?
We can't answer that question
Okay.
with well, not yet. Anyway, maybe we'll get there. But it's fascinating
men.
that there is
I'm sure it's men.
a physical, now observable difference in the way that pain is recorded in the spinal cord between men. These are mice.
Men and
Male
women
and
mice.
female.
Of course.
A mice.
This story is about this week in mouse science. I mean, this is
This
really
week in mouse science. Ooh, except for this last story. Has nothing to do with mice. It has to do with die. And not like an 18-sided die or 36-sided die or anything
neither
like
of those
that.
are real. You're losing nerd cred.
This dye is chemical fluorescent dye. Then it's a method that researchers from the George Whiteside's lab have used. These are mixtures of 7 commercially available fluorescent dyes that they are using to save data. We've talked about DNA storage. We've talked about we've talked about peptide storage. This lab previously has tried to store data, digital data, using peptides, little bits of molecules, little bits of proteins. But one of the students in the lab, a graduate student, came up with this idea for using fluorescent dye. And it turns out that it is cheap, it's efficient, and it's fairly easy to do. So it's a way, and that these dyes, they attach themselves on little like microscope slides. They can attach the dyes attached to a coating on the slides, put a cover on the slide, and then you can use fluorescent light to be able to read it late at some point later. This could be an archival method that will allow long-term data storage. Maybe not more than DNA and all that kind of stuff, but cheaper and easier. Pretty cool. And what?
Oh no! If you're still doing the story, keep going.
Yeah, so I was going to say that the researchers report now, they just have reported in ACS Central Science in their paper that this is basically with fluorescent dye. They could use a basic inkjet printing technology to be able to code using binary. It's either there's dye or there's no dye. Does it fluoresce or not fluoresce? And the different colors of dye allow them to have a greater number of bits of information that can be encoded. And the researchers to this point They say that the information can be read with 99.6% accuracy, which is really darn good, and in a 7.2 by 7.2 millimeter surface. That's tiny, little tiny millimeter surface. They were able to write 1.4 megs of digital information with these dies. So it's compact, it's cheap, fairly easy, and they are developing it as a company now. The system writes information at an average rate of 128 bits per second, reading it at a rate of 469 bits per second, fastest reported read speed of any molecular information storage method to date. So, potentially, I mean, all the other fancy high-tech molecular methods, maybe dye is the one that works to store our data forever.
The ancient Sufi people used to put all of their traditional stories and their information that they wanted to save and keep, and all the things critical to their culture, into tapestries.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
and they would do this for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons is because they got taken over a lot. There was always another horde of somethings coming through and dispossessing them of their possessions. But the thing is, they would keep all the tapestries and the rugs and the stuff that were stolen from them would be kept, and would still have all of the culture encoded in them. I guess they could go and look up their culture later if they found it.
If they found it.
I guess you had to wait
And
till
that's-
there's like a museum or something displaying. Like, it would take a while. It's sort of like the long game, but the idea was that it would not get destroyed. It would not, like a text will get burned or a religious artifact will get smashed, but people will keep the tapestry. So there's always a chance you can get it back.
And this is similar to that. This is data storage in a physical format that, as long as somebody has these little slides somewhere, our national library or some cave in Iceland, wherever you decide to store these things, as long as somebody has them somewhere, it's at some point and I think it's interesting that you use the tapestry example, because this kind of being using colored dye for this as well, it's kind of it's similar. It's a little teeny tiny tapestries.
Yeah.
Little teeny tiny tapestries of fluorescent dye. Yeah. Which is it's just amazing to think that as much data as we have, our storage to date is so temporary, and we have always thought too short term. And it's, it's good enough for now, and that's great. But how do we eventually preserve our cultures? How do we preserve all of the information that we deem important? I mean, I hope that we eventually, save all of the cat memes and cat videos on YouTube.
Oh gosh. Well, it's like
What gets saved?
one of the arguments I can see against having another new, bigger, gianter super collider. You haven't even really gotten through the data you've generated so far.
Yeah.
Like, how many human years until you can get through that? I don't. The same thing with some of the who were we interviewing who was doing dark matter detection, and she was explaining that the data she had collected was like grad students are going to be pouring through this for like the next couple decades because they collected so much data. It was a certain point where we either got to find a method to get through this data faster. It was something better than what we're calling machine learning, because that's still not, that hot. We need to get to a point where we can actually get through this data, or we just need to stop collecting.
Yeah.
Focus on digestible meals.
On what? What? No. I want all of the things.
Too much.
All the things. Have we made it to the end of our show?
I think we have.
Yeah, did
And
we
we
make it?
managed to get there without Blair, which is amazing because I did not even know that was possible.
She usually keeps us on track, right?
Mhm.
Makes us keep on the trail. Don't get off the trail. You'll get eaten by a cougar. Never
Quick,
mind.
somebody yawn.
No. Oh, thank you, everyone. We have made it to the end of another show. Justin, thanks for a great show. Thank you to Fada for help with social media, for help with our show notes. Thank you to Identity4 for recording the show. Thank you to our mods, Harnlore, Gord, everyone who does work to make sure that our chat rooms are happy, peaceful places for people who enjoy science. Let's keep it that way. And thank you to Rachel for her help and assistance for editing the show and all the other wonderful things. And I would like to thank our Patreon sponsors for their support of TWIS. Thank you to Kent Northcote, Rick Loveman, Pierre Valazar, Ralphie Figueroa, John Watnaswamy, Carl Kornfeld, Karen Tazi, Woody MS, Andre Bassett, Chris Wozniak, Dave Bunn, Vegard Shefstad, Hal Snyder, Donathan Stiles, a.k.a. Don Stylo, John Lee, Ali Coffin, Maddie Perrin, Gaurav Sharma, Shubru, Don Mundis, Stephen Alberon, Daryl Myshak, Stu Pollock, Andrew Swanson, Fredas104, Sky Luke, Paul Ronovich, Kevin Reardon, Noodles Jack, Brian Carrington, Matt Bass, Sean and Nina Lamb, John McKee, Greg Riley, Mark Hessenflo, Gene Tellier, Steve Leisman, a.k.a. Zima, Ken Hayes, Howard Tan, Christopher Rappin, Dana Pearson, Richard, Brendan Minish, Johnny Gridley, Kevin Railsback, Rock Me Day, Flying Out, Christopher Dreyer, Artyom, Greg Briggs, John Atwood, Arizona, support Aaron Lieberman for governor, Rudy Garcia, Dave Wilkinson, Rodney Lewis, Paul, Mallory Sutter, Philip Shane, Kurt Larson, Craig Landon, Mountain Sloth, Jim Drapeau, Sarah Chavez, Sue Doster, Jason Olds, Dave Neighbor, Eric Knapp, E.O., Kevin Parachan, Aaron Luthen, Steve DeBell, Bob Calder, Marjorie, Paul Disney, David Simmerly, Patrick Pecoraro, Tony Steele, Ulysses Atkins, and Jason Roberts. Thank you for all of your support on Patreon. And if you would like to support TWIS on Patreon, head over to twis.org and click on the Patreon link. On next week's show,
we will be back Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific Time, 5 a.m. Central European Time, broadcasting live from our YouTube and Facebook channels and from twis.org/live. Want to listen to us as a podcast?
Just search for This Week in Science wherever podcasts are found. If you enjoyed the show, get your friends to subscribe too.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes and links to stories will be available on our website, www.twis.org. And you can also sign up for a newsletter, maybe, if it's still a thing.
Yeah, and remember, our calendars for 2022 are available there as well. You can contact us directly, email Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twisminion@gmail.com, or Blair at blairbaz@twis.org. Just put TWIS in the subject line so that your email doesn't get spam filtered into an intermittent variable thingamajigger that we don't really know what it is, and we don't know where it is, and we can't really tell much about it in the center of the galaxy, because that might be bad. I mean, alternatively, it could end up in some old
Salt
feces with blue cheese and beer, but you don't want that either, so.
Now, put TWIS somewhere in the subject line, please, people.
Yeah, please.
You can also hit us up on the Twitter, where we are at TWIS Science, at Dr. Kiki, at Jackson Fly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes due in the night, please let us know.
We will be back here next week, as we said, and we hope that you'll join us again for more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from the show, remember,
it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This week in science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth, and I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science, This Week in Science, This Week in Science, 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 This Week in Science, This Week in Science, This Week in Science, 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 This Week in 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 Science.